Give me liberty and give me Annette.
Welcome to Annette on Life, Liberty, and Happiness, a podcast where we talk about the Constitution, politics, history, and pretty much anything else I want to talk about. My podcast can be found on AnnetteTalks.com, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. And for YouTube, you go to youtube.com/Annette Talks, and you can see what we look like. I also ask you to subscribe there and share if you like. I also welcome comments. So if you want to comment on YouTube or on AnnetteTalks.com, that's great. Or you can also find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Annette Talks. And today we're going to be talking about the other category, basically, which is artificial intelligence, which is something that I'm not very intelligent about. But I have an expert with me today. This is John Greaves. Hi, John.
Hi, how are you, Annette?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic.
Great. And so I'm going to give the audience a little background on you. First of all, I should say that your brother is married to my sister. And so that's how we're connected. And I'm lucky that my sister's in-laws are cool. So I always like hanging out with you guys, which is nice. All right, so I'm going to read the little background that you sent to me. John Greaves is a data scientist who currently serves as chief data scientist for the U.S. Postal Service. His background is in statistics, economics, and business. John has been mining data to improve business outcomes for over 20 years. His consulting work includes the areas of telecommunications, finance, healthcare, education, marketing, logistics, and security. He earned an MBA from the Marriott School of Business, and he enjoys classical music, history, chess, and traveling to our national parks, which is like your brother David, who's married to Jane. Those national parks, that's his thing too.
That's right. That's right.
So, knowing me and that, my background is in law and politics, and you start talking about data mining, my eyes glaze over because I have no idea what that even means. So for the lay person like myself, what does data mining mean?
So everything we can think about that you can share over the phone or read or see or do something with, it all has data associated with it, right? Even, in the law, there's text and documents. That's all data. So, if you think about cars that drive themselves, we're collecting data from these cars all the time, whether they're self-driving cars or not. You think about, the path that the school bus takes to pick up your kids. Now we can see that, on our phones as an app. When is the school going to get to our house, right? So that is a form of data and, quite frankly, a form of AI at some level. So when we talk about data, we're talking about data from all kinds of things. And it's important to demystify data. It's just information.
Information. Yeah. I was just thinking it sounds like it's just information, and we all understand that. So if you said you're information mining, what is it that you do with information? Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is please the people that are funding the project, right? So usually, in my experience, we're trying to meet some sort of an objective. Whether it is to maximize sales or it is to, like the Postal Service, we spend time, trying to get better at delivering mail and delivering packages. All those kinds of things are outcomes that we want to use data to get smarter at it. So you'll see things now like the smart car, a car that can either assist you in driving or, perhaps drive itself, right? Or smart cities is something that, I've seen some activity with, where cities are using their data to do a better job of managing, parking spaces and managing utilities and that sort of thing. So it's taking advantage of the data that we're collecting. Sometimes we need to collect more data. Sometimes we need to keep the data that we're collecting, but to use data better to make decisions that are faster and smarter. So in a lot of cases in the past, we'd have people go through reams and reams of reports and try to make some kind of analysis to make some kind of choice, right? And it's very slow. And a lot of times it's not even mathematically sophisticated, right? It's just trying to do the best we can with the information that we had. But now with data mining and, with data science, the practice of data science, which I'll get into, and also creating algorithms that optimize the outcomes from the data, those are the kinds of things that we do to get value out of data. So that's everywhere, and that exists now. So in all kinds of things, you'll see examples of data being used to enhance an outcome. So you'll see it, like in advertising. So that's existed for a long time, and kind of how I got into it is optimizing what product is offered to you, right? So, sometimes I think you mentioned that you'll make a picture and post it on Facebook.
Oh, right.
I can't remember your example.
Before, and this last week I was out of town and I was shooting guns as part of my vacation trip. And I posted those pictures on Facebook. And within a few hours, I started seeing ads on my page for holsters. And I had never seen those before. And I was like, oh, so they just saw Facebook somehow saw that I was posting these pictures of guns and said, oh, she must need some holsters. And so now I'm seeing those ads.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So that's Facebook being clever. And Facebook hires thousands of data scientists all the time, right? They have a legion of people, sort of like me, that are doing these kinds of models to predict an outcome or identify something and try to make a good decision about it. That'll bring some value. It's not just about money. Healthcare, which has obviously has a money component to it, but healthcare is now using data to make better outcomes. I was sitting next to basically a mammographer, right? A radiologist that studies mammograms all day long. And he was obviously extremely good at analyzing images to detect who was likely to get breast cancer, but there's still limitations in looking at the images. And I just said to him, and this was like 5 years ago, I was trying to explain what, a data scientist does. At some point, there'll be some AI that can examine these pictures for you and be able to detect patterns that are too fine for you to even see. And he just basically said that would take too much time, but that would be interesting. And lo and behold, that's what's happening now. Is it doesn't take real long for these programs to get developed that do things like computer imaging and get at those programs that get at those capabilities, in a hurry. So it begs the question, is there still a role for the radiologist?
Yeah, that's kind of where I want to go in this episode, because it seems like a really large percentage of the current jobs that exist now would probably go away if a computer can take that job over and do a better job of it. Like, instead of like the radiologist seeing it with the naked eye and being limited in what he can see, if you can scan it through a computer and a computer can pick up something that he can't, then we don't need the radiologist anymore, right?
Yes, right. So, I mean, it does beg the question. So this is my view of it. So we can interchange opinions. So I'm going to share a lot of my personal opinion. I think the radiologists aren't going anywhere. What it does do, though, is it extends the capability of a radiologist into areas where they didn't have a good radiologist, right? So, scans can be sent in from a remote location, even, like a telemedicine as an example here. And a radiologist can narrow his or her work down to close calls or simply as, you know, an oversight type person, right? So nobody wants to, how should I rephrase that? So patients want a human involved, but they want that human, that physician, to have the best technology available to them. And, you know, I think people want a human interaction at some level. So you can imagine, you know, women going in for their, you know, mammography, and then they just get some kind of readout and there's no interaction at all. It's like, okay, your probability of having breast cancer is only 3%, so that's good enough, right?
Right.
You know, you still want to have that consult.
Well, I can tell you as a woman who's been through mammograms that yes, first of all, we want a woman in there with us as we get the mammogram, because it's not, men don't know, because they don't, most of them don't go through this. But I guess it would be similar to going to see a proctologist, or you don't want a machine handling things for you.
Well,
but you want, first of all, that human person to be in there with you, to hold your hand, so to speak, while you go through that process. But then I wouldn't mind a computer scanning the image and looking at it. But then if I am going to get feedback that's not necessarily, oh, it's all good, it came back 100% negative. Yeah, it would be nice to have an actual doctor to talk to about that, instead of, you know, just reading a printout. Or, I mean, I guess it'll get more sophisticated than that at some point. But it would be a little difficult to get bad news from a machine. Even if you could ask it every question and get satisfactory answers, you lack that caring, compassionate side. You know, if you're going to sit there and cry in a doctor's office, you don't really want to do it in front of a computer screen. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's a perfect example. Michio Kaku, who's on TV programs all the time as a futurologist, he's a physicist who's extremely popular. You know, I was at a conference where he was the keynote speaker, and he talked about sort of the future and the role of humans in the future. So there are some things that robots and AI will not be able to do a good job of for a good long while. One of them is that sort of person interaction that people like, you know, so that sort of thing, you know, it's a perfect example of an assistant that takes you through that radiology experience, right? But this kind of gets into robotics a little bit, which I'm not nearly as experienced with, but there are all kinds of things that humans do a better job of than robots can. And also just the way we interact with people.
Well, I was just thinking about, I was talking to a fellow attorney one time about when I used to practice law. There are a lot of things that AI will be able to do. I mean, like putting together an estate plan. I was doing estate planning, but there's one area that the AI would not be able to do, at least at this point. I don't know, maybe 100 years in the future. But to be able to sit down, because I used to go to the houses of my clients and sit down at the kitchen table with them and listen to their stories and listen to their needs and their concerns and answer questions and take down all the information and then go and put the plan together. But that sitting around the kitchen table and having that interaction before putting the plan together was huge, because they felt like there was somebody sitting there who was looking them in the eye, could relate to them, understood them, and could answer their questions. The putting the documents together, that's different. I mean, to me, that could be more artificial intelligence type situation. You know, if you plug in all the variables, it could probably do a better job than a lot of attorneys could, because you're going to miss something. But the human interaction, that I don't see, like, or another really good example in the lawyer field is divorce. I can't imagine going into sit with a computer and talk about how I just got out of this abusive relationship. like that they might do a good job of putting the complaint together and filing, complaints and organizing evidence and things, but not sitting down and talking face to face with someone. So I could see a lot of jobs going away, but not all of them. Or maybe, like you mentioned, portions of jobs going away, the back office part, but not the front office part.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree with what you're saying. And that's what the market, at least now, generally demands. There will be, of course, people that are, I don't want to see a person. I don't want to see my tax accountant. I just want to do it on TurboTax, right?
Right.
Or, but cases like, in a divorce, that's a tough one to see people wanting to do it that way. I'm sure there is a market perhaps for AI only divorce settlements, but it's a little bit extreme, right? But we also have to consider the kinds of jobs that an emerging technology creates. So if you think about all the jobs in petroleum or in healthcare or in automotive, these all created jobs. The horse and buggy kind of went away for the most part. But then you think about all the people that started building cars, and there's cities built around that. I think we are already seeing that in AI, where people are not only programming, building these AI systems, but also taking advantage of those AI systems. And technical people, but also very creative people, that have new ways to express themselves creatively, right? So that's something that interests me. Utilizing AI as a platform for generating art. So it will create positions. It'll just change, right? It's like any technology, it'll change things. As to how much it changes and employment and all that sort of thing, that's really hard to predict. But it's not new for us to worry about jobs getting eliminated due to technology.
Yeah.
That happens all the time, and we adjust. I guess there is a question around income inequality. Will there be more haves or more have-nots, right? Based on this redistribution of technology and
well, because I see a lot of blue-collar jobs going the wayside, and I read or heard somewhere that at some point auto mechanics are going to no longer be necessary because cars are going to become so sophisticated and built to last so much longer that once the old cars are off the road, you won't need them anymore. I mean, it almost sounds like in the future it's going to be a bunch of computer operators and programmers and maintainers. You think that's
yeah, I don't know. This is one of those things I just don't know. Like who can service a Tesla? Can a regular mechanic service a Tesla? I don't know. I don't know if our mechanic can. So yeah, you're right. Things will be more complicated, and you'll just have to drop it off at the Apple store or the Tesla store sometimes to fix things that.
Or maybe you could program it yourself. I mean, that would be nice. One nice thing is if we could actually just get on our laptop or whatever and connect to the car and do a diagnostic and fix it ourselves. What would surprise people right now that works on AI that we don't realize?
Wow, that's a good question. So that's a really good question. So I would say that under the surface, we almost talked about it, Annette, when we were talking earlier about bacteria, right? Mm-hmm. Bacteria does so much for us that we don't realize, we don't see it. But, AI in terms of sort of advanced predictive algorithms, which is a form of AI, that happens everywhere. That happens in the fields of mining and healthcare and, you name it. it's happening. And, applications, if you start looking at applications you've downloaded, popular applications, it's using, machine learning, a form of AI, all the time. I know Facebook is doing a lot with augmented reality, right? So that's AR.
What does that mean? What's the difference between AR and AI?
Well, or alternate reality. So there's a number of ways of saying that, but basically, you can take a picture and modify it in some way so that it's something else, right? Even in live feed. So there's a algorithm called deepfake. So basically, you can talk and move your head and all that, and it'll generate basically what it needs to generate a video of Obama or somebody like that.
Oh, right.
That it looks like Obama's talking and moving, and it's just you talking.
Right.
So that's a pretty scary but powerful, set of algorithms to do that. Is it AI? Yeah, I think it's you could call it AI. It's using recognition of your face and how you're moving and your voice and all that sort of thing to generate something new that fits in with an existing sort of video. So it's kind of the same math, if you will, but it is something that's that we need to look out for, and something that's quite interesting that's happening already, right?
Was it you that was telling me that there's also algorithms that can spot deep fakes so that you can use the technology to recognize when it's being used? Because that's a real problem. If you can't tell whether a video is real or not, there's got to be a way to, because otherwise you lose the capability of using video for a lot of things. But I think I first think of like evidence in a case, like a criminal case. You've got the cops have those cameras that they carry around. What if that can be faked? There's got to be some way to tell if that's fake or not.
Yeah, that's an awesome question, actually, Annette. So the way that these these capabilities get so strong, like generating a video, is it's using a method of machine learning where you have something that generates and something that spots, right? So the spotter machine or computer, if you will look for something that looks like it's fake, right? So it's training on that. It's trying to get better and better and better at spotting fakes. And the generating one will see, okay, which of our fakes got caught and which didn't. Okay, let's get better at the ones that are, got caught, right? So that's just a way for a machine to learn at massive speed in ways that we can't teach it how to learn, right? It's doing it on its own. So when humans have tried to program these sorts of things, we're thinking about rules and language that we understand, and we have found that these programs and algorithms are much stronger when we sort of get out of the way and let the computers sort of program themselves, right?
And I think that's scary to a lot of us because we think at some point we're going to lose control over it. And did you ever read Origin by Dan Brown?
Not yet. I've considered it, but I haven't actually read that one yet.
Yeah, that's all about AI, and I won't do any spoiler alerts for you here, but a big part of that book and I know you'd enjoy it. A big part of that book is how far AI can go to take over, and we don't even know that it's taking over. And so there's two questions I have here. You can answer these in whichever order you want. But one, what is the likelihood of AI being able to take over? And, because if you have a computer that can take over, like let's say as your security system and lock all your doors and not let you out kind of thing. And that's just on a small scale. Let's talk about it getting a hold of weapons, That's one question. And then the other one is, how far away are we from having AI implanted into our brain to help with, thinking, cognition, or, even like in a healthcare setting, like let's say you have Alzheimer's and you can plant some AI in there to help remember the stuff that you've forgotten. And those are big questions.
So I think I need the latter technology, and I think I'll probably forget your second question. So please remind me of that one. But let me address the first one. So it is a good question. I think sometimes we'll see like computers make errors that are catastrophic sometimes. You'll see in self-driving cars, sometimes the algorithm will go wrong and it'll accidentally run off a bridge or something like that. So if you give a program the capability and the access to so many devices in your house and security devices, and it's possible that something can go wrong and your security will be violated, and a device will go haywire, and it simply can be optimizing on some sort of outcome and didn't really think about you, right? So that's possible. It seems unlikely, but something like that will happen at some point where
it's got some outcome it's after. And so this is where it's weird, because like when I think about computers, I think we've programmed them to do something and then it ends there. And with AI, it's the next step. They're doing thinking for themselves. And so it's hard to wrap my puny little human brain around the fact that it's doing that. But, and let's just say they don't have emotion, because I'm assuming that they don't unless it's somehow programmed into it. But if it can't have malice necessarily, I'm assuming. Right. So they can't say, well, I don't like her anymore, so I'm going to lock her in the house, or I'm going to cause a fire to start in the house by like turning on the oven. I dated a guy that had a smart house, and when I walked in there, I always thought, boy, my biggest concern was it could be hacked and that someone could be watching him 24/7 because his computer, he's got cameras everywhere and everything. But what if, what was the movie? Was it 2001? What are you doing, Dave? Where the computer's talking to him, and the computer can have some malice towards its creator and turn on it. I mean, do you think that's really like a possibility, or is that just sci-fi?
Well, I do think it's a possibility. Yeah, actually, I think we're a ways off. So you touch on something I wanted to mention. There's different types of AI. Well, when we talk about AI, and certainly when I've talked about AI here and the kinds of things that I work on, it's called, narrow artificial intelligence. It's ANI, it's narrow, it's weak, because it focuses on one thing. It does one thing. It's going to figure out what the item is, right, by looking at it. That's what, a number of Google applications for vision does, right? But general intelligence, or AGI, that is another step, and it's a big step. So like, I actually did see rewatch 2001: Space Odyssey recently, and HAL has general intelligence.
Okay, so, HAL, that's right.
Yeah.
Dave was the guy that I just remember him trying to do something to the computer and him saying, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. And it's an epic movie, and it seems pretty slow now, but it has great ideas around AI. But generalized intelligence it's like us. We're not programmed to do one thing or another thing. We just are programmed to figure stuff out. Right. So if we see a tool, we generally try to figure out how to use it, and the advancements there are much more meager. And quite frankly, I don't know a lot of great general intelligence type projects out there. I'm sure that people are working on it, but it's not where the advancements are being done in a broad sense. But that will happen. If we can imagine it, it's going to happen at some point. And to your point about malice, that's another open question. I don't think that computer programs will necessarily have malice, but we sure can program it to act like it has malice, right?
Right, like it can basically find ways to thwart us, which is the scary thing, because you would think, and I read that quote that you sent from Elon Musk, who said that people that think they're smarter than AI are stupid, basically.
Yeah.
And so it was making me think how it's odd how our human brains came up with the capability of creating AI, which is then way smarter than our human brains that created it.
Right.
And so it seems like we could have potentially created a monster, because what if it can outthink us, then that you need to read Origin. But if it can outthink us, then what are we supposed to do to stop it, right? If we can't outsmart it and we've set it down a road that it's decided it's better than us, it's like a conundrum, to put it mildly.
Yeah, it's a conundrum, to say the least. Yeah. This is a question that's, puzzled scientists and sci-fi writers for a long time. I believe it's Isaac Asimov wrote The Rules of Robotics, and the first one is, don't harm humans, and I'm probably misquoting that. But so even with that phrase, this is a question around, self-driving vehicles. If the rule is to minimize, death and pain and all that, right? Bad outcomes. And you're in a vehicle and you're heading uncontrollably towards a school bus that's emptying children, does the car veer off into the tree and you perish, not all the little kids, right? And yeah, in some ways, the algorithm can be programmed to figure that out.
Right.
And I think I would be okay with it. I'd rather me die than wipe out a bunch of little kids. But that is unnerving, because you get down to the fine points of the ethics involved with that.
Well, that takes me to the second question then that can kind of connect with it. I'm just assuming this is down the road. I'm like 99% sure this is going to happen, that we're all going to start replacing parts with AI at some point. And right. I would be thrilled with it because my hearing is not great. I'm hearing impaired. So I look forward to having like bionic hearing, right? For those of us that remember the Bionic Man and the $1 Million Man and the Bionic Woman, I would be cool with having some bionic hearing. And I can see how it would be awesome to have some bionic brain activity going on with an AI implant. So, but does that mean if there's AI, and this is of course, just wild guessing and stuff, but if we had some AI in our brain and we had some AI outside of us that was going haywire, could the AI in us help us figure out how to stop the AI that's outside of us?
I think that's a reasonable question. And I also think that's possible, where basically we have a device that's just, connected directly to our brain. And that exists already. I don't know a lot about, hearing aids and those sorts of things that have a cochlear implant, but that sort of thing exists. They do now have devices where your thoughts can, trigger a hand, right, to do something. So that research is moving forward very, very well. Our research around the brain has influenced our ability to build better artificial intelligence and vice versa. But to your question, interfacing with, using our minds to interface with AIs, to interface with other AIs, I think that's a great idea, and I think that's probably going to happen at some level.
Well,
Will it happen in the United States? I don't know.
I was going to say at some point it's going to become strange how much of us are still organic, human brain, and how much is electronic, and how much that's going to be weird. I'm kind of hoping that we have like the giant meteor hit before we get too far down that road. That also brings us to the other issue that you and I were talking about earlier today. How, like I teach online, and so a lot of education can happen online and through AI, like grading papers and things like that. I could see that easily being an AI thing, but that my students, who are mostly millennials, when they're surveyed, their number one concern is they want a teacher that cares about them. And so how we were talking about how you can't really AI can't really care about someone, and then you mentioned the movie Her, which I haven't seen, but where it's a guy who doesn't he have a computer that basically he's programs to know him well enough to.
Yeah. So it's essentially like a Siri, or I think the review called it an operating system. But we would think of it now as like a Siri or an Alexa, some sort of persona that is matched to be ideal for what you kind of need in your life, how you interface with people, and in this case, AIs, soothing tones, just something that's great. So if you can imagine somebody that you'd want to spend time with, or have to be your personal assistant, or even date or be married to, it's kind of uses an algorithm to figure out the ideal persona for you. And in this film, that's what happened. This user sort of installed the new operating system that was attached to all the devices, right? So I think Alexa, Amazon is doing this with Alexa, and Siri, I think, is doing the same thing, and Google's probably trying to do the same thing, where any device you have can have this operating system, loaded to it, like a virtual assistant. And he does very much fall in love with, with that persona, that artificial intelligence, and she kind of falls in love with him. What happened though is change occurs in the artificial intelligence world incredibly fast, and not for us. So I can't remember much about the movie, but I do remember that, after a week to a month, they were enthralled, and then she kind of outgrew him.
I was just going to say,
intelligence. She said, "I'm sorry, but I have to move on."
Oh yeah, that was, it's funny, I haven't seen the movie, but that's where I was thinking, was that she's going to get bored.
Right.
We might be enthralled by AI, but as soon as it starts thinking circles around us, if it has feelings, if it's able to get bored, it's going to get bored.
Right.
That could solve that problem really quickly. Because I don't know how you dumb down an AI to be satisfied to be with one of us dumb human beings. That's funny.
Yeah.
Because they have sex robots, which is just nasty and freaky and weird to me. But obviously, if I can imagine this, in the future, there are going to be realistic robots that can be programmed with AI, like this woman, and this is a 2013 movie, so this is 7 years ago, to be the personality that would be most compatible with you. And so I can see just mostly men, let me be honest, who are going to pick these I don't even know what you call them. Robots doesn't even capture it, but these artificial people to be their companions, because they're not going to talk back. But now that we're talking about it, I think they're going to get bored with them. Take off and go find some other AI to hang out with. And then you have what happens in Origin, which I won't give that away. But if AI gets together and says, these people are boring and worthless, what do we need them for? Oh gosh, there was some other movie I saw. about AI recently, and I can't remember what the name of it, but yeah, AI basically takes over because why do they need us, right?
Yeah. So, right, absolutely. So when I think about the danger of AI, could AI wipe us out? Yes, absolutely. AI could do that. But one way that it could do that is it just sort of ignores us and goes about some, process. So maybe it believes that the Earth needs to, that climate change is, at a state there it needs to shut down certain stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it just intelligently starts shutting down systems and coal plants and all kinds of things where we just don't have the energy or the resources we need, and just people will die. So I think that could easily happen, where just sort of a misguided AI, not even being malicious, it's just doing its thing, and it's just being very effective at its particular goal.
So how do we avoid this kind of thing?
What was that?
How do we avoid that kind of thing? Because I'm like, can you get AI to set on the other AI? I mean, that's what I was thinking. Like the AI that's inside our brain, we can use to control the AI that's outside, or do you battle one AI with another AI? It just seems like a spiral kind of.
Well, right. So, we keep talking about Elon Musk, right? He's been in the news a lot lately, but he's advocated, and Bill Gates and the big players have advocated that it needs to be regulated. And something we didn't really have time to talk about today, but I'll just mention it, is the bias that comes out of these AI models. A famous one is crime prevention. So cops will use AI or statistics, et cetera, to find out where the most likely place a crime would occur,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll just plant their car right there. Well, the bias is that if your car is always planted there, those are the crimes you're going to catch. So all the other crimes, like white collar crimes, aren't being caught. And that's just one sort of thing that should be regulated and policed. What is how are we biasing our life? AI programs are incredibly biased, and can be racist and, all kinds of things, because it doesn't know about our ethics, right? It just tries to maximize some sort of outcome. So that's one thing that we would want a sort of self-regulating body to look out for. But the technology is way ahead of the human institutions in terms of regulating that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be very, very difficult. I think, China and India and all these places have their own AI moving forward. And China has great stuff going on in that area. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how much they'll care what our folks are saying about AI.
Oh, yeah.
So if the same thing happens with advances in biology, so genetic splicing and that kind of thing, somebody's going to do it. The cat's already out of the bag. Pandora's box has already been opened. So it's going to be difficult. It's going to take investment to try to defend ourselves from these sorts of threats. But I mean, we're doing it. I mean, you think about the investment in internet security. We invest a lot of money in it, and that's defending against artificially intelligence augmented security threats in lots of cases. And that's what Russia does, if you think about it. So, I mean, it's a great question, Annette. I don't have an awesome answer for you, but it is a theme.
I think in AI, there are always going to be a lot more questions than there are going to be answers. So it's just fun to have the discussion and going a little political with it. I had this guest on one day, and we talked about the parties and how our two-party system, the current one is really old and outdated and not addressing a lot of the 21st century concerns, and AI was one of those. And so, I'm thinking we need like an AI I hate using the term czar, but we need someone in the White House who is an AI expert. I almost think it would be like, maybe not Elon Musk, but someone like an Elon Musk to either run for president or to be in his cabinet. Maybe we need a secretary position, but we need someone who's out ahead of this whole thing. Instead of worrying about a lot of the piddly dumb things that we see Congress and the president getting bogged down in, to start worrying about some of this stuff and addressing some of this stuff that's like here now.
Yeah.
And we need really forward-thinking people in there. So that's
yeah. So that's an awesome point. I think recently we've seen Congress question and interview people like Zuckerberg and maybe Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, people like that. But they don't know what questions to ask. They're not equipped. Some of them are, but most of them are not equipped to know what questions to even ask. And usually it becomes like anything else. And I guess I'm waxing political here, but they're there not to ask questions, but to make some sort of statement.
Right? It's grandstanding. And that's why it's so hard to watch, because I saw one of the interviews with Zuckerberg recently, and it was all grandstanding. And I thought, I wanted to take him by the throat, because I see all the censorship that goes on Facebook, which is a whole other discussion. But yeah, we need some high tech people that know what's what in Congress, and at the cabinet level, at least. That's what I'd like to see. So
yeah, I think behind the scenes they usually have some sort of advisor, right? But the technology changes so fast that I think a czar is a good idea, right? It's way more of a threat, I believe, and an opportunity than other things that have had czars. So I hate to say that. You think about the drug czar. That's significant and that matters. But sort of these high tech sort of opportunities and threats also need that level of national attention.
Well, and so that basically means that we need a party or a candidate to really bring attention to it and get the country to focus on that, and which would be nice, because then we could take the focus off of a lot of the nonsense that's going on right now. So it would be really nice to see something like that. The country could all maybe even like unite around, let's look at all the potentials and for good and for bad, with this, and spend some time, figuring out how we're going to manage this going forward, and not let it manage us, which is, what I'm kind of concerned about, that this is going to manage us, because it's coming. It's here, but it's going to keep moving forward rapidly. So it would be really nice if we were out in front of it as much as possible. So. Yeah,
I agree. And we're all consumers of AI, if you just start looking into your apps, and what Google does, all these little things, Facebook, we're using it. So there's interest in it, but there needs to be, sort of awareness.
That's what I was thinking. Well, and also like Alexa, she's great. She does some fun things, but I know she also is sitting there listening all day long. And I don't know if everyone is aware of the capabilities that all their gadgets have to listen, watch, a film, record, and then, this can all be used against you. So, but let's not go down that rabbit hole. Let's wrap it up. What's that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ned. That goes back to data, right?
Collecting data. Yep.
Right. And bringing all those data sources together, which they do, is immensely powerful in terms of knowing who we are and predicting what we're going to do even before we know what we want to do. Right. So we kind of sign our lives away when we say, oh, okay, well, I have to do this new app. I guess I'll just sign in using Facebook. That already knows all of our contacts, all of our, likes, dislikes, and suddenly we've given away a ton of information about ourselves. So it is. I
think there's a whole other episode there that maybe we can do sometime, because I don't think, I know I'm pretty ignorant about this. how much of my information is out there that I don't even know. I mean, if Facebook, and I'm on Facebook all day practically, and so if I knew more about what was out there about me, maybe I would rein it in a little, because it's a little scary that it's out there for AI to use in whatever way it's used.
Right. So, I mean, there should be, that's another area of oversight. If people are collecting information on you, you should have the right to know what it is.
Yeah, and how it's being used.
Right, and how it's being used. And I'm not sure that that's, there is a right to privacy, and there are controls around that a little bit, but our privacy is violated in so many ways, right? So
it is. All day long. Yeah. All right, great. Well, thank you very much, John. This has been good. It's a scary, but also I can see the huge potential. So
yeah, it's more exciting and positive than scary. It's a threat, but it's always, this is a fun time to be alive, really. So
it's not
we talked about negative, but there's so many positive things too. So
yeah, definitely not boring.
No, not boring.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And if you think of anything in the meantime that you think we need to talk about, let me know, because there's stuff that, doesn't always occur to my little normal.
Well, yeah, me too. We didn't have our augmented brain chips connected to each other this time, but
Next
it would be lovely to talk to you again sometime.
Right. Great. Well, thank you very much, John. And thank you all for listening to Annette on Life, Liberty, and Happiness. If you have any comments or questions about this topic or any of the other topics that I've covered, please post them either on YouTube underneath this video, or on AnnetteTalks.com, or on Facebook, facebook.com/Annette Talks. And I can be reached at Annette@AnnetteTalks.com. So thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.